Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Aurovilians. Today we have Holger back with us on music, and this will continue for some time. So we welcome all musicians, all lovers of music, to see these videos because they're very important for the future. Today we will talk about a number of things, and I begin with a quotation of a question from Amal Kiran to Sri Aurobindo, and we'll take it from there. Once you have said Goethe not being one of the world's absolutely supreme singers. Who are these then? Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Valmiki, Kalidasa, and what about Aeschylus, Virgil, and Milton? I'm sure you know many of these, Holger. Then he says, I suppose all the names you mention, except Goethe, can be included. Or if you like, you can put them all, including Goethe, in 3 rows. That is, okay, Sri Aurobindo says this. First row, Homer, Shakespeare, Valmiki. Second row, Dante, Kalidasa, Aeschylus, Virgil, Milton. Third row, Goethe. And there you are. To speak less flippantly, the first 3 have at once supreme imaginative originality, supreme poetic gift, widest scope, and supreme creative genius. Each is a sort of poetic demiurge who has created a world of his own. Dante's triple world beyond is more constructed by the poetic seeing mind than by this kind of elemental demiurgic power. Otherwise, he would rank by their side. The same with Kalidasa. Aeschylus is a seer and creator, but on a much smaller scale. Virgil and Milton have a less spontaneous breath of creative genius. 1 or 2 typal figures accepted. They live rather by what they have said than what they have made. Holger, we have gone from a world that lived by the objective senses, the 5 senses, and humanity is now entering a world of the subjective. Can we apply Sri Aurobindo's qualifications to music? For example, in your field, the violin. Can we speak of greatest violinists or the capacity of violinists, the quality, the inspiration? Tell us what you feel.
If we are going with such a list of the poets, first we have to understand that those poets are, all of them, creators, whereas violinists, generally speaking, are playing creations of others.
Yes.
So in any case, any list would limp very much compared to that. If any, we should put composers there, not violinists.
Ah.
I have very great respect for certain musicians that are executing works of others. Like we spoke the other day when we speak about pianists, we seem to have the same liking. So we would like both of us like Dino Lipatti and don't like Glenn Gould that much. Now, Glenn Gould I mention here because it's out of the question that he is one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century. Yet, we both like him not that much. We respect him, I guess, we should, in any case.
Yes.
It's unbelievably clear how he plays and gets all the lines equally. It's right. But at the end of it, I feel I have heard Glenn Gould. And when I listen to Dino Lipatti, I don't have that feeling at the end. I don't have the feeling I heard Dino Lipatti, the great. No, I heard a piece of music. And even that, I forget about the composer. It becomes just this flow of structure and emotion and insight. So the two of us tend, when we have that kind of experience, to rate, as with Dino Lipatti, to rate that higher. We just have more liking for that where the person disappears rather than appears in a very impressive, shining way.
Then we had that American pianist who won the prize in Russia for the Rachmaninoff. Big, tall Texan guy.
Okay.
And I can't remember his name at the moment, but it'll come back. But I have felt very often a great beauty in Richter. What do you feel about him?
Very much like Dino Lipatti. When I see him playing what he plays fantastically, like Schubert, then it's not even Schubert there anymore. It's for me then it's just the chord and the material of the music that is becoming all. And that's what I love. And it goes well together with an interview with him, a whole movie, when he's old and couldn't play anymore. And at the end of that movie, he said, into the camera, I don't like myself. And I was so touched by that.
Yeah. But people have to understand it in the right way.
Exactly. It's not a psychological problem he has here. It's something he is not attracted to. But Karajan is at all moments attracted to that, to Karajan. I would assume. I didn't know him personally, but from the feeling I get when I listen or see him, that's the feeling I get.
See him especially, I
Especially,
think.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And well, now we're into conductors, but Furtwängler,
Yeah.
I just saw a very rare video of him conducting. Quite special. I will send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get, it doesn't matter whether we speak about poets or whether we speak about violinists or
Conductors or
conductors,
composers.
doesn't matter. It seems to be that, can we say the magic word ego here when the ego gets more in the foreground in the creation of something?
I would agree.
It's just so overused, the word, and so extremely misunderstood.
Yeah. Yes.
That I put a little hesitation on using that word. But somehow we have to grab this. So then suddenly the whole art world and also the rest of it is more like two grades. Is it more in this direction or is it more in that direction?
Maybe it's personality, which is also ego.
Mostly, yes.
The personality of someone. For example, we could have someone who plays beautifully, and I have seen this Chinese fellow play beautifully at times, and yet one gets the feeling of the showman.
You speak of Lang Lang.
Lang Lang.
Yes.
Yes, I'm speaking of Lang Lang.
Yes. Exactly. One, you get that, and there is great success in that because people like to identify with this. And I have not a disregard for people like that. Also, say, for example, if you take a rock guitar player called Steve Vai, one of the greats, fantastic. He has supreme command over his instrument and all the things you can do with it. He knows exactly how to stand to get the right response from the amplifier. It's wonderful. He also has nice long hair, and when he plays, he has a fan blowing his hair, so it really looks fantastic. It is quite clear what his message is about. It's about him. But he does it better than anybody else. So I have admiration for that. I have respect for that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
It's just not filling my days to be so attracted to that. I see it, and then I said, man, he knows his job. So good.
I felt that way about Pletnev when I first heard him do the Gates of Kiev, the
Mussorgsky, yeah.
Mussorgsky pictures at an exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Gilles said, "There's too much rubato. I don't like it."
Okay.
So, how do you feel about rubato?
It cannot be answered generally because it depends where and in what
Yes.
music or even speaking. Of course, rubato creates some kind of drama, which it is there for, generally, and then overused. And if you overuse it in romantic music, or you can't hardly overuse it, it's allowed, it's required.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that in Baroque music, it is a totally different thing. So it's like vibrato on the violin. It's not a good or a bad thing, it's a device. So if you play tango non-vibrato, you fail.
Ah,
But
yes.
if you play some Telemann solo sonata for violin, and you do it nicely on the G string with a lot of vibrato, you also fail. Fail? Why? Not that it is not allowed. Anybody can do anything, that's totally okay. But there is in a composition, hopefully, an inborn power, an inborn, yeah, maybe one can say that, an inborn power. And like on a wave in the ocean. So as a surfer, you can go wherever you want, but if you want to ride the wave and use the power of the wave, then you have to ride in a very specific way. So you're a good surfer if you can ride long and elegantly on that wave. And fast and whatnot. I'm not a surfer. Mm-hmm. So while you are free to go wherever you want, at the end where you can ride safely and without getting wet and no danger, that's the end of the wave. Or you're going tubing and then it's life dangerous and exciting. So this is determined by the shape and the size and the speed of the wave. It's not something you can determine. So when you are playing a piece, the piece is like the wave. It gives you something, some energy. And if you are riding against that energy, you're not getting the best out of it, let's say, the most exciting out of it. So that would happen if you play with a lot of vibrato and on nicely up in the higher positions of the violin, you play a Bach solo sonata, you're not getting it.
With vibrato.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Or the art of the fugue. While Bach, for example, did not specify with which instruments you should play that. You can play that on the organ or you can play that on any instrument. that has it's a four, so you have to have 4 lines possible, otherwise
Right.
not. So he didn't write it for string quartet or for orchestra or for organ. He just wrote the notes. So you are free to play it with whatever instrument. Even in terms of speed, Bach allows a greater variation than many other compositions, which is actually very fascinating, that you can play a Bach piece in many different speeds and they all work. Whereas other pieces, it's more restricted. You play them in a wrong tempo, the wave doesn't lend its energy. Yeah. Mozart, for example, if you would play, like I did as a child, the E minor violin sonata, it's pretty, but it's not the energy of that piece, which is which is driving forward. But because it's amicable, Mozart is kind of always amicable, you can slouch down and don't realize it. But once you play it in the right tempo, you know the big difference. And that is with Bach not that much, I feel.
Strange, but when I was singing in Manhattan, New York City, and surrounding areas, I love Schubert's songs. But I also like Hugo Wolf,
Okay.
and I don't know why. He seemed to break out of a mold or out of a frame into a different area of sound. And some of his pieces, so beautiful.
I don't know him well, so we can't thrive on a discussion here, but maybe we can go to how subjective our perception
I think this is very important.
of music and
Yes.
art in general is and has to be. And why this list of greatness of pianists or violinists or composers does not really make much sense. I can say, I think without doing Steve Vai any harm, I can say about him what I said before. And I will have still full respect for that. But we could not say that he is a very raw, fresh inventing rock guitarist. That is not what we see here. So we cannot say that Schubert is a better composer than Hugo Wolf. I can say that now because I don't know Hugo Wolf very well. But
And we have
But-
Schumann also for the Dichterliebe.
yes, but these are all, now you say that from a perspective of a singer.
Yes, only from a perspective of a singer.
I'm trying to see it from the perspective of a creator. So there are many other things, as in the beginning quote of Sri Aurobindo when he says, when one could put different categories. Now, he doesn't put the category there of a poet where he doesn't rhyme well, or where there are like technical flaws or weaknesses. We have to assume when we make such a list of composers that they all know their trade, which for a long while was in the focus and was good enough, especially in the Baroque times when the the aim of being an artist was not to create something new. It was not to create something very personal. You could do, but this is not, the aim is to fulfill the law in the most elegant way.
And Stravinsky said that, who was it, Respighi, or he said he didn't write 300 symphonies, he wrote one symphony 300 times.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's almost sounding like a joke and slightly arrogant, but only from the point of view of a 20th century composer. Yeah? So the spirit of the times requires the artist or writer to do what he does in a particular way. And the spirit of the times at Beethoven times was to shift from a Baroque idea of gracefully fulfilling a purpose to an individual search, like we have in Goethe's Faust. You know, this is like, it became like proverbial, the Faustic urge of the human being. I want to know what holds together the world in its innerst. You know, this is the beginning of his long monologue in the beginning. I don't really think Bach thought much about that. Not even Mozart very much.
No,
this
Bach-
actually starts later as a mankind project. And then great artists with super high skills like Beethoven, they catch up that they catch that and ride this wave.
When they criticized Bach, I think he said, I thought I was writing for the divine.
Quite surely he did, but that everyone could say. Everyone can say that this is, but which divine? That one of 1600 or that one of 1800 or that of the 21st century?
Interesting.
That is very important.
So when Beethoven comes on, would it be possible that there was a breakthrough also?
Yes, that's where this comes.
That's where it comes.
Yes, because it was important to write from the individual point of view and then go as divine or as universal rather than as possible. And that is what he managed, and maybe earlier than others and maybe better than others, and that makes him the towering figure among other composers who tried.
I would have to say that in the late quartets, he certainly did it.
Yeah, because he goes into something which goes even beyond the individual then. So his main task would have been to achieve this individual formulation that he managed. But in the late quartets, he goes actually in something where I sometimes think he doesn't know himself where he is trying to reach, because it's in a way not even yet come down. It's a 20th century music.
Yes.
Without certain devices, techniques that only came in the 20th century, but the thrive that almost going into the material of the music entirely without the singable, emotional, amicable thing. So he jumps over the romantic.
Yes. Yes, he did.
Yeah. That's quite fascinating and maybe also unique. And Bach does not attempt that ever, I would say. He is always in this completely fascinating mechanics of the rules and how he can make this so unbelievable, special and artful from all points of view you want to look at. It's always this fascinating crystal. That's why he is, I think, also so universally loved, because at this perfect fulfillment of the I don't know what, he can be admired from a 21st century point of view equally than from any other place. It seems to be beyond the times, but it is not. It is the times that dictated him that, and Telemann tried the same. He just maybe didn't manage that skillful, although he is also very skillful. Yeah? So when we think of new music,
Oh, that's a subject I'd like to
next time.
keep for the next time. There's so much there.
Yes, true.
But I would like to ask you about a couple of conductors, because I know that Silibidake is severely criticized for his criticisms of other composers, and yet he had something that was almost spiritual to me in his conducting.
Yeah, for me, not almost. For me, spiritual.
Okay.
Because, see, initially you said there was the kind of, you placed the five senses to objective.
Yeah, that was science at that time also.
Yes.
If we can see it, touch it, feel it, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
It's real.
And then we put the not five senses, that would be the emotions, we put that to the side of subjective.
Mm-hmm.
I think...
No, objective.
The emotions to subjective. And the direct perception of the five senses
to objective.
Objective.
Okay. Got it, yeah.
This is how it's generally done.
Mm-hmm.
Colloquially speaking.
Okay.
And I think it's a mistake.
I do too.
I think the direct perception is extremely subjective.
Agree.
We cannot see anything objective. We can create, after the fact, an appearance of objectivity by I hear what you say, I hear what that person says, so we can extrapolate some objectivity that none of us can actually think, see, perceive as that what it claims to be, the objective thing. Like in that thing where there's this elephant in the dark room and people go in, the one feels the trunk and says, oh, it's a snake, and so on, this famous teaching story.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that nice and works as a story? Because we know what an elephant is, but they don't. And this is what has to dawn to us, that we do not know ever the divine or all of these things. We do not know how Auroville should be.
In our present state of consciousness.
We do not. And in a next state of consciousness, we will know certain things, but other things we will still, again, not know. And while Sri Aurobindo talks about that often, because it's beyond the mental, we act, I would say, unfortunately, as if this is not the case, as if we know exactly how things should be. We just have to behave right. We have to make this and these kind of roads circular in and so on, stuff like that. It's obvious. There it's written. And then we have to play Bach like this. It's obvious. And if you play Charlie Parker, you have to do this. It's a misconception.
Yes.
We are trying to speak about how I hear Beethoven late quartets and you hear, And if we feel some similarity, there is a smile in us coming up and a kind of friendship and so on. But this is just because what you see and what I see has a similarity. It doesn't have to do anything with necessarily with what Beethoven sees. Leave alone those energies that are beyond you, me, and Beethoven. And the hope or announcement of Sri Aurobindo of a coming subjective age would be a general understanding of the subjectivity of everything, especially the so-called objective world. It really appears only so. So how can we struggle about whether this is a good chair or a good violinist? Nothing to say about that. The only thing I can say, I like that.
We've talked before, I think, about Mother listening to all kinds of rock and roll.
She did. I didn't know.
And she says, they are standing on the threshold, but they don't know yet how to cross over.
Yeah.
How beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you next time.
With pleasure.
Namaste all.